live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to the Friday edition of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that brings you the very best guests in all of true crime. And today it is Great Scott, it's your True Crime Phil, a show so good it happens every single Friday. Last couple of weeks, the times have been bouncing around. Soon, our man Fil Waters, who, by the way, is the present founder, shareholder in Kindred Spirits Investigations. He is going to be heading back to the Big Island of Hawaii. So once he gets there, I think we're going to be doing afternoon shows for a while. And Scott Duffy, of course, a former Lower Merion Police Department. Scott Duffy, today I was mailing out some copies of my book, and people behind me are having a conversation. And it's I wouldn't say a slightly older woman, definitely in her, I'd say, late 60s, mid to late 60s, kind of tough looking. And she's talking to the guy behind me, and she says to him, yeah, I was a police officer in Pennsylvania. It caught my attention. I whipped my head around and I said, I know a former police officer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Scott Duffy. And she says, wow, that name sounds super familiar. And I said, he went on to become an FBI agent. She says, wow, she's like 3 towns over from you. But long story short, she thinks that it was just a sort of somewhat common name. And we made some small talk. And I thanked her for her service as a police officer. Now she's retired. And she's hanging out with her grandkids. So for full disclosure, yet again, it's been another stressful week. I don't think they'll ever not be stressful, but I had to go to the gym to alleviate some stress. It's been so stressful that Edvard Munch's The Scream, his head has now fallen off his body. So I need to now, it's a good thing I have another one here. I don't go anywhere without him, and he's here next to me. But one of these days I'll organize my desk, but I'll have to order another Edvard Munch The Scream. So, am I allowed to say that you two are going to be together next week? Is this top secret? Scott Duffy, you're leading the dance. What's happening next week? There's not going to be a Fil and Scott next week, which is devastating to me. But Scott, whatever you're allowed to divulge, I know it's an active investigation. You can tell us, and what you can't, you can't.
Well, I think the press release is out, right, Scott?
We are hosting our annual, we call it our Violent Crime Symposium at Wilmington University. It is a conference for active and as well as retired law enforcement. We get quite a few that ask us, and we say, absolutely, come on board. And it's a 3-day affair of speakers of many different calibers, speaking on a variety of issues. And the great Fil Waters has agreed to present for us, as well as the lovely Susan Constantine, who I had a great time with, to meet with and chat with at the Crime Con in Orlando. So looking forward to it.
So it's their gain, our loss, because again, next Friday, I'll figure out something to do. I have a feeling that next Friday we should do something with Carm, like a fun Friday with Carm, and we'll figure something out. Fil Waters, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, how's your week? How's everything going there, Fil? By the way, there was a comment up here that says Fil looks fantastic. So here it is, right here. Kim DeLorme. Fil is looking good.
Well, thank you, Kim. Thank you.
Fil, how was your week, Fil?
It was very busy. Very busy week. Got a lot of irons in the fire. Got back from Dallas Wednesday. Had to run up there for a site visit on a premise liability case and go by Dallas PD and connect with some old friends there, because that's where the reports were, but was able to.
Do you have a lot of friends at the Dallas PD, Fil Waters?
What's that?
Do you have friends at the Dallas PD?
I do. Many of them are retired now, but I have a couple that are still up there and active and always willing to help, and I greatly appreciate it. So yeah, so it's been fun. And then I was yesterday, I did something I have never done before. I always like to experience something different, and I like to learn something new every day. So yesterday, at the request of my daughter, Jennifer, I did the presentation so that 14 Girl Scouts could earn their detective merit badge.
Wow, I never thought I'd heard this sentence, Fil Waters and Girl Scouts. This is 2 words, but this is awesome. So you're giving them a detective merit badge?
I'm not. I just I got the requirements for them for their detective merit badge and presented that to them. And I have an old captain of mine in homicide that is the chief of police at a small municipality in Hedwig Village, where my daughter lives in that area. And he was gracious enough to allow me to use their training room and make the presentation there. And part of the presentation, one of the requirements was to talk about fingerprinting and so forth and so on. So the last function of the day was a couple of officers that I know were more than willing to bring the girls into the jail, fingerprint them, and mugshot them. So it was really kind of a cool deal, and a bunch of 11-year-olds. And so it was pretty like trying to herd cats, but I mean, it was still a really positive experience. And then at the end of that, they were presented their merit badges, and they were also given a badge sticker that said Junior Police Officer on it from Hedwig Village. So it was just a lot of fun.
That sounds awesome. Bayou Babe, another one. Fil does look amazing. Look at this. I think Scott's almost getting envious here. This prompts a follow-up.
Well, it's like the old Billy Crystal line, right? It's more important to look good than it is to feel good.
100%.
I appreciate that.
I would agree with that. Hello from Edmond, Oklahoma. We're going to get to the misfits in Oklahoma in a minute. We're going to spend a substantial amount of time this Friday. I just got to have fun this Friday. Western Arkansas, I don't care. But this prompts a very important. This is not the question I was going to ask, but Fil Waters, I think I've asked you this before. If I happen to be in Houston and I walked into the Houston Police Department and said, I am friends with Fil Waters, would the red carpet get rolled out? Would I be treated like royalty because I know you? That's not the question I was going to ask.
Well,
are you a legend?
I think you would be. I don't know that you'd be treated as royalty, but if you talk to the right person there, they would probably give you a little extra benefit. But I still have a couple of folks down there, so I don't.
How often do you pop in there?
Not as often as not a whole lot. I mean, it's 45 miles away from where I am, and I do go down there on occasion to review cases, to meet with attorneys, sometimes to testify, sometimes to look at video recordings from assessment centers on child cases, criminal cases. And so I'm down there every once in a while. Unfortunately, I still have some folks that I did the security for the Texas Republican Party convention in 2022 at the George R. Brown Convention Center. And I was there for 10 days, and the guys that I know the chief, and I know a couple of the execs and their chiefs. And anyway, they were very, very gracious in assisting me in putting the security together for that entire convention that was attended by 8,000 to 10,000 people, as I remember. And very interesting, very interesting. We had couple little dust ups that ended up on YouTube. And it was a very interesting time. But yeah, so I do try to get down there. I do call friends of mine on occasion to assist me and so forth and so on. So yeah, over the years, a lot of agencies around the state, around the nation, around the world, for that matter, I've really been able to develop some great relationships, and I think Scott would back me up on this, that in life in general, that's what it's all about, but especially in the law enforcement community, establishing those relationships and those contacts that you can go back to, and they can come back to me. It's very, very important, and I wouldn't have accomplished anything if not for those folks and all those folks, patrol personnel. I mean, I've been very blessed. I've been surrounded by some really capable, amazing people in law enforcement, from the patrol level on up to the federal level. So, yeah, pretty amazing.
So the question I was, after Fil talked, and we're going to get to Oklahoma, I promise, but it's a weird Friday, and indulge me here, was when Fil brought up 11-year-olds, I immediately had a vision of 11-year-old Fil and Scott. Scott Duffy, when you were 11 years old, describe to me, what kind of kid were you? Were you, I don't know, were you a good student? Were you wild? Were you hyperactive? Were you playing kickball and sliding on the pavement into home plate? Just give me a description of you at 11. Do you remember?
I don't, 11?
Yeah, like, were you a wild kid? Like, what was your?
I don't know if I would. No, I wasn't a wild kid, but I was outside with I lived on a great block, Pedham Road, and there were lots of kids. So it was wiffle ball.
Were you doing well in school? Were you getting in trouble in school? Were you the kid throwing the paper airplanes across the classroom?
I did throw a few.
Yeah.
I will say that. And I get caught for everything. So maybe that's why I didn't turn to a life of crime, because I got caught no matter what. And if I didn't get caught, I got blamed for it. So I realized this not the life of crime is not for me.
Do you think your fourth grade teacher ever thought you'd be an FBI agent?
Fourth grade. I want to say my favorite teacher was fourth grade, Miss Bingo.
But do you think Miss Bingo thought that you would become an FBI agent?
Yeah, no, I don't know what she thought.
You're probably better off. Fil Waters, how about you? I feel like your father was strict and that you fell in line. Were you doing well in school in fourth grade? Were you paying attention, or were you a scoundrel?
Well, are we talking about the age of 11?
11, yes. If you can remember.
I'm a little bit older than you guys, I think. So,
you are. Don't worry.
Was that a one building schoolhouse?
I think 11 was what, like
your fifth grade?
Grade, I think.
Sixth grade, yes.
Yeah. So, I was a good kid. I was more of a prankster, more of a jokester. I was the guy that was, popping off in the back of the class and chunking the airplane and stuff like that. And, in biology class was always a real treat. Once I got into junior high, we got to cut up they had the little pigs that we used to do little, cut them up and see what they look like and all that kind of stuff. And then we had the crawdads. We would cut them up, big crustaceans. And, we would do stuff like cut the head off of that thing and then put it in a person's locker. And so when they open the door, they've got this, crawdad looking at them, which shook some people up. But no, I had a lot of fun. Had a great childhood, and it was, I mean, I got caught, and my dad was a guy that went to all the ranchers and gave, selling them feed supplements for their cattle and their horses and that kind of thing. And so he was gone all week. And whenever I did screw up, my mom would say, "Wait till your dad gets home." And those are always the words I did not want to hear. And then on a few occasions when he did get home and one of those weeks, then yeah.
Then your kids heard the exact same words.
Yeah, well, Phil got his mind right pretty quick.
I had a good friend, Matt Kaufman. I should probably spare everyone this story, but he used to sit in the back of the classroom. This is a little further on, maybe ninth grade, but I don't know how he would do it, but he would draw small little pictures of the male anatomy, the phallus, and he would outline it so much that he'd be able to pop it off the paper in the perfect shape and form. And then he would go and put them on people's shoulders, and he would do that to everyone in the class. And then eventually the teacher would say, "Why is there a phallus on your shoulder?" And we'd say, "What are you talking about?" And then Matt Coffin would die laughing, and then he would get in trouble, and this would go on. So these are the types of things that happen. But on a serious note, we've got a lot of Okies in the house today. Look at this. Oklahoma City bombing 29 years ago today, and this horrific tragedy of these two women has Oklahoma being very solemn. These are weird dates. I think Waco is right around now. Adolf Hitler's birthday. There's a lot of weird things that happen, like April 19th, April 21st. But Phil, I imagine you remember well the Oklahoma City bombing. By the way, before we get there, Midwest, proud mama here. My son just made a Phil, a detective. Congrats, as we say in the Jewish religion.
Congratulations.
Fil Waters, what do you? Let's get back to the Oklahoma situation in a moment. But what do you remember about the OKC bombing? It is the anniversary, after all.
That was in 95, right?
29 years. Yeah, that makes sense. 29
95.
years.
So I had just been transferred to homicide in late December, January of 95. So I do remember that. And I had friends of mine that were working for the federal government, a couple of guys in Secret Service. And of course, I did not know where they were at that time. And of course, my immediate concern was were they in that building? And fortunately, they were not. But I just remember the devastation. I remember seeing the pictures of that building just in a quite literal sense split in half. And I remember the pictures of law enforcement bringing children out of there bleeding and trying to save the folks that were injured very, very badly, and trying to get a sense of what had happened and get that thing under control. And that is one of those moments that is etched in your memory.
Can see Phil is a good soul, man. He's getting choked up, and I remember that well. I was like my first year ever in news, 4 years out of college, or 4 years out of college, and horrific, absolutely horrific. Then we know, obviously, Timothy McVeigh, and what was Terry's last name? Terry Nichols, correct?
Yeah.
But I think Terry Nichols is still in the Supermax, I believe, and Timothy McVeigh, as Phil said, received the ultimate rehabilitation. Scott Duffy, at least 5 people have asked about your door behind you. Did you build that door? They want to know. And they also want to know what's up with Miss Vingo now. Have you spoken to her in the last 50 years?
So I'll answer that first. I have not seen Miss Vingo many, probably, I would say the last time I saw her was 10 years after.
You think she's still with us? You think she's still with us?
She just was a lovely lady. I don't know. I've not heard. And then, of course, once you move away from your hometown, you hear less and less. And the door. So,
yeah.
No, I have a good friend who's also neighbor up couple of streets over, who's a great carpenter. So he built that door from scratch.
It's a beautiful door. All right, let's get into the misfits here. For those who do not know, these two beautiful mothers now leave behind 6 children because 4 crazies in rural Oklahoma thought it'd be a good idea to kill them so there would be no custody battle. That's the gist of it. These are the 4 here, and they portend to be part of a group called God's Misfits. Now, they were arraigned this week, and they were charged in the kidnapping and murder of these 2 women, 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder. Now, there is news that is breaking about this, believe it or not, and that is new court documents. Fil Waters, I'm going to go to you first on this. New court documents say that one of the suspects in the murders of Veronica Butler and Jilian Kelley told law enforcement, and this was Tifany Adams, the one on the top left, Grandma Adams. She told law enforcement that she was responsible for the deaths of the 2 Kansas moms. What do you make of that as a veteran homicide detective, that she has come out in a court document and outed herself as being the person responsible? What does this mean?
Well, I'm glad she did that. She's made this admission. She's provided them a confession, and she may be thinking that this is going to minimize the other participants of this thing, whatever they're facing, but I don't think so. If she's the one that orchestrated it and she's owning up to it, good for her. But that won't minimize the other cast of deliverance here from receiving their justice, their just punishment, if they're convicted or if they plead, of course.
So, Scott Duffy, the motion to hold the defendants without bail, writes Tifany Adams' attorney, the paternal grandmother of Butler's 2 kids. They say that she, quote unquote, provided a recorded statement to law enforcement indicating her responsibility for the death of the deceased. Is this, Scott, in part because Oklahoma has the death penalty and she's a coward? She knows she got caught, and now maybe she's trying to protect herself from either getting a firing squad or a needle put in her arm. But I mean, how do you read between the lines here? It's not every day that one of the 4 suspects, the day after the arraignment, is recording a statement saying, "I did it."
Yeah, I'm glad, and I'll attribute that to great law enforcement and probably a beautiful interview that managed to get her to confess. And I don't know if the others had not confessed or we're just not hearing about it, but it's just a shame. This is a very sad story that has a great ripple effect well beyond their little inner circle or whatever they were going through, and then to have brought these 2 ladies into their web of whatever they did to them, and ultimately removing them from children who need them, and many other loved ones. So it's just good. I'm glad for law enforcement. I give praise to the law enforcement for getting that confession. But who knows what her motive was? Our goal is to just get the answers and make sure that it holds up so it can be delivered right to the very end, to where you hear either guilty or somebody pled guilty and receives the maximum that can be brought here, whatever it may be.
So many Okies in the house. I love it. Of course, Fil is originally from Oklahoma. Nancy's here, and then
hi to Nancy. That's my hometown, Tulsa.
Yeah, please share your memories. People are sharing memories about the Oklahoma City bombing. I was working at Eckerd Drug in Southeast Oklahoma City and found out because the pharmacy was trying to call a hospital for prescription refill. And we're, of course, talking about the Oklahoma City bombing back in '95, and was told they were in code black because of an explosion downtown. You just never know when things are going to change in an instant. Phil, as we look at this graphic that the COE built so quickly, of course, they're being held on no bond. I want to go through some of the affidavit with these two gentlemen in a moment because they're such experienced investigators. But one of the other things that we find out in these newly filed court documents is they also address the Twombleys. There are these two here, bottom left, bottom right. Now, what's interesting about this too is Cole Twombley has announced that he is hiring a private attorney, but the wife is going to have a public defender. So I don't know if he's throwing her under the bus. They're not paying for a private attorney for her. But what we're finding out in these new and we can address that in a moment, but in these new documents, we are finding out that the Twombleys, these two on the bottom, Fil Waters, have a history of violent interactions, and they pose a grave danger to witness and community members. That's an interesting admission in these court documents. I'm not sure who it's coming from, but I suppose that's no surprise to you, is it, that they're violent, considering what they just did?
Oh no, these this is quite a pair to draw to, right? I mean, they're this group that they're in, God's Misfits, I've read is an anti-government group, and we were talking about sovereign nation, I think, last week.
Yeah, sovereign citizens. Yeah,
that's a similar type ideology, anyway. And so these people, they're at least from what we know now about them and about what they've done, alleged to have done. These are more evildoers. And just is amazing how these people think, I guess they think they're going to get away with something like this. It'll be interesting to find out. I mean, they're all in this little collective group. Grandma running the whole show. And, when you look back on when this thing first, the genesis of this investigation, there was always speculation that it had to be more than one person that got these women under control. I don't think Grandma just showed up and started shooting people. This whole freaking crew, either a couple of them showed up and the rest of them were used to dispose of the bodies and whatever they were doing here. Because it's not easy to get rid of. It's not easy to get rid of one body, let alone two. So I just give great credit. Scott's already mentioned it, but I give great credit to to our guys at OSBI that, in my view, this is a textbook way to run this kind of investigation. All the clamoring of the media and all these people online and on social media that think they have a right to know about what's happening during an active investigation. OSBI, they handled it exactly the way they should have, which was to release the information that they wanted to release that would not compromise the investigation. When they found the signs at that scene, that car 1,000 feet off the road, blood, indications that there probably been a shooting, some other things going on there that knew where they were headed, that this was going to be a recovery, not a rescue. So kudos to them for doing what they did, and they were methodical about it. This is one of these cases where you've got a group of detectives that are working night and day to get this thing resolved. And then they come out, and then the next thing we know is all of a sudden you've got, it looked like a SWAT team and other personnel going to make the arrests, which is what they did. And so here we've got them, and it's just a heartbreaking that it turns out this way, but it's some comfort that they've got these people in custody. They are charged, and as this moves through the system, they're going to be, the families here are going to be getting some measure of justice that will, we hope and pray, brings about some peace. So
Jessica Souza here. I did not see this, but I looked at it very quickly for full disclosure. But Scott, the new court documents apparently also say that they attempted to bury Veronica and Jilian 10 feet underground and then put hay on top. They were hoping the cattle would eat the hay and make it not look suspicious. These 4 people are evil. Assuming that this is true, and they buried them 10 feet. I know, it happened on a land that Tad Cullum, the boyfriend of the grandmother, was renting out. But that does that go to show, premeditation or anything along those lines? The fact that they buried him this deep and had the wherewithal to do that.
I mean, I don't know if it shows necessarily the premeditation, but it definitely shows the lengths that they were going to really ensure that these bodies could never be found. I mean, 10 feet is if that is true is a tremendous. It's quite deep, and my guess is they had something other than just a couple of shovels where
they have like a John Deere type, whatever you call
it. Definitely to go 10 feet. I mean, you're talking about a majority of anything that typically leads to a homicide where you're going to have some sort of burial. They're going to be shallow graves. It's things that ultimately are not so planned. And if they're lucky enough in a rural area where there's not some sort of hiker or somebody else who just happens to be passing by and find something, animals can dig and grab human remains and then discard those remains, and somebody will ultimately find it and law enforcement will be called. But to go that deep, it really shows the depths of their mind, of the afterthought of what goes into ensure that body and evidence are not recovered. So really, for when you really think about it, law enforcement to put all this together and to come up with the arrests and the recovery of bodies, it's really astounding.
Yeah, in such short time. I mean, less than 2 weeks, I believe it was. Fil Waters, look at this graphic here. So News Nation, Brian Atton interviewed this guy. His name is Judge Vincent Forbes. Forbes admitted in the interview he's friends with Tad Cullum. The next day, the city council in Elkhart, Kansas, forces this guy to resign. Forbes then says he's not involved professionally with the case. But the reason I bring it up is there was someone in the chat who said that Cole Twombley, one of these 4 arrested, the brother is running for mayor. How does this complicate things that it's such a small town where everybody knows? I mean, this guy just lost his job, just where everybody knows everybody. How complicated is that in terms of trying to get a fair trial if it does go to trial?
It's going to be a challenge. I am sure the defense will be asking for a change of venue as soon as they can. You're talking. I think I read. I may be wrong about this, and I'm sure there'll be somebody out there that will correct me. But I think in that area, the Panhandle, there's only something like 2,300 people. I mean, it's a real. I mean, very, very small population of folks. And you're right. Everybody, of course, Elkhart's in Kansas, but it's right there in that same general area. So, it is going to be tough. It's going to be. Now, I will tell you this, though. you could certainly find 12 of their peers right there. So it'll be interesting to see how it proceeds through the system and what decisions are made by whatever judge ends up seeing this case through. So yeah, it's going to be I think it will be a challenge.
By the way, Jamie Justice, I want to leave this comment up, but Jamie Justice, and I've heard this other places, that this guy, Cole Twombley, his own son died under suspicious circumstances on his dad's property. So these are definitely shady people. And in the affidavit that we're going to get to, their juvenile child is apparently the one that kind of blew the whistle on the parents. So kudos to this young 16-year-old. Interesting. I didn't know this either. David Parsons says Adams is represented or was represented by Stephen Jones. Jones represented Timothy McVeigh. Small world. I think I remember that guy, Stephen Jones with glasses. In Oklahoma, Scott Duffy, if someone dies in the commission of a crime, everyone involved in the crime can get the death penalty. She's trying, this is Granny Adams here, trying to save the others, but she can't. My question to you, Scott, the fact that she is confessing essentially to this crime, will she, in your opinion, still go on trial, or will some sort of deal be made? We'll take the death penalty off the table, but you're going away the rest of your life.
Yeah, I mean, so initially giving up herself almost to the, and I guess not having seen the interview yet, is she doing it for the purpose of trying to get the other three out of it and say, hey, only look here, I'm the only person to look at? Not sure what her intention for the confession is, but I do know, for the sake of the last charge being a conspiracy, everybody from top to bottom could potentially get the same. So even if somebody's brought in at some point during the commission of the crime or after the crime, and helps with the discarding of evidence in the body, if they're looping everybody in, they're saying they all participated in some way, shape, or form, and thereby they will all or potentially can receive the same sentence, whatever that sentence is handed down. Now, her confessing, will that confession continue to hold up through the process when she realizes the depth of what the state's coming after her for? So she can pull that back and fight and say, hey, I was hoping to get out of the death penalty, but they're not taking the death penalty off the table if in fact the prosecution proceeds that way. So it can absolutely go to trial, and she can fight that confession, saying that confession, is illegitimate or coerced or whatever she's going to do. So it's a great thing to have, but it still has to test time and what everybody else is facing it. So it can absolutely be turned over and everybody decide to go to trial.
So people are reminding me too. So this 16-year-old is the child of Cora, not Cole, even though Cole and Cora are married, but it's just the daughter of Cora Twombley. And here, and a few people telling me that Twombley's brother is running, not for mayor, but running for sheriff this June 2024. Now his brother is in jail for murder. So that's an interesting development. People are wondering, Scott Duffy, you think this 16-year-old is in any danger because she basically told law enforcement what she knew had happened? Do you think she's in danger in such a small community where a lot of people have firearms and there's what appears to be somewhat of a mob mentality, especially among this group of quote unquote God's misfits?
Yeah, anybody who provides information, especially to what sounds like a group that has, where at least some members have some tremendous violent history, I would say any witness is at a potential risk. So to hold them without bail is a great thing, and that's going to be right through the trial. And of course, depending on their reach to others, I don't know enough about this group or how many are other in this group. So the investigation may be continuing to see who else not so much participated in the crime, but are willing to do anything at their bidding. You know, this is a cultish like group, and so is that it? The four of them made up this group, or are there others that have very similar ideology and are waiting for their instruction, which could be, "Hey, I'm outside, so if you need something," to include intimidation of witnesses. Just so absolutely, law enforcement is at looking into all that and would jump on anybody that shows the slightest bit of effort to offer cooperation to these four.
Someone in the chat was asking, how could a landowner not know? This is very rural, lots of acreage. And here you see from Ann, apparently Tad Cullum asked the owner of the land if he could bury some concrete deep in the ground. He made up some story about rooting out a tree and doing some work, but obviously he had more sinister intentions there. Someone else, I was in 7th grade when the OKC bombing, lived 2 hours away at the time. Now I work across the street from the OKC bombing memorial. Again, the anniversary of that. I'm going to show you this. This is the perp walk for the misfits here from Wednesday when they were in court. And then I'll ask Phil some questions about court. Here we go. That's Cole Twombley.
Cole, do you have anything to say to Jilian and Veronica's families? Do you have any remorse? Did you do it?
Did you murder those women?
Do you have anything to say to the children whose mothers were murdered?
Why?
Tad Cullum here. Still can't get over the fact this guy's 43. Looks like he could be Duffy's great-grandfather.
Anything to say?
Here's Granny.
Any comment at all?
Now, Cole Twombley, to me, Fil Waters, looks like he was grinning. Also in his mugshot, he looks like he's grinning. What's amazing about our country, Fil Waters, in other countries, these guys might be shot on the spot. Here we've got them in flak vests and protected. I understand there were snipers on the roofs. News Nation reported that to protect these people and protect the public, just so they can have a fair trial. I don't know. You watch people for a living. Did you see anything in those perp walks that stood out to you?
Not really. I mean, you know, they're caught. I understand it. I have never myself been a big fan of the perp walk. I get it. They want to show the public these people are in custody and maybe calm things down. But and then you've got the reporter sitting there yelling at the guy like he's going to answer some questions. I mean, come on. So it's just at that point, it becomes, in my view, it just becomes kind of a media circus. I don't see that it serves much of a purpose. And but watching them go in there to get back to that question, the grinning or the look like he's smiling or grinning in Scott and my business, we would just call that inappropriate laughter, right? That's an inappropriate show of that particular emotion for whatever reasons. because they're, I mean, good grief, they're not in a very comfortable position, and you would think it's one of those things that, when put in a situation like that, and it happens in the interview room all the time, your body reacts in a certain way that you cannot control. So I would imagine that if that, you want to call it a smile, a smirk, or grin, whatever it was, that was his body reacting to the situation he's in. And the way it reacted was that he gave that little, what looked like might be a smirk. It's not really something that you can control at that point. And Scott and I have seen it, like I said, in the interview room, when they'll make a statement and then they kind of chuckle, or they give you a smile, or they do something, and right then, for us, that's a key. That, okay, they're doing something here that's, in the context of what we're doing, is just inappropriate. And so that means that gives us the next series of questions that we can ask. So I don't find anything unusual about the way these folks are looking in the middle of this perp walk.
Raymond Weiss, I believe he's making fun at me. Joel, what country do people get shot like this? Somalia, LOL. If you don't think that in other countries around the world, people are routinely murdered for all sorts of things, not the least of which is just being gay or hanged and things of this nature. So trust me, Ray, when I tell you we have an unusual country in that we take care of all our people, including the worst of them, putting vests on them to protect them. I can guarantee you a lot of other countries are not doing that. Look at this. Wendy says, best, still love you there, Ray. Best trio on YouTube. There was something that just crossed my mind that was actually quite important that I wanted to raise, but now I just completely forgot it. So it'll come back to me. But Scott Duffy, during this arraignment, I don't think you're going to be surprised. But I know what it was. Fil Waters, I have another show for you on Netflix. Remember, we talked about the other one. Well, this is it's called What Jen Did. I watched it the other night, and the COE said to me 2 days ago, I was waiting to watch a doc with you, and you weren't home, so I didn't watch it. Meanwhile, the next night, the COE was out, and I didn't wait for her, and I watched the entire thing. And she's like, this was the movie I was going to wait to watch. You're a jackass. You didn't wait for me. And I was like, oh, I didn't know you were interested. But anyway, the movie is called What Jen Did. And Fil Waters and Scott Duffy, you will both find it interesting because the entire doc, 90% of it takes place in the interview room. And that's all I will say. So What Jen Did.
Is it a movie or a documentary?
It's a movie. It's like an hour and a half documentary. And your wife will enjoy it. And that's my homework assignment for you, Fil Waters. So, Scott Duffy, this arraignment happened Wednesday morning. It got wild in the courtroom. And I can't blame these people, but family of the victims screamed out, you ducking witch, but it rhymes with that, and then said, you sorry pieces of S. And literally, the brother of one of the victims or uncles had to be restrained from jumping over to try to pummel these people. How dangerous? I mean, you've been in court a lot. I mean, there's bailiffs and stuff, but tempers can really fly in there. And that's understandable in this situation, isn't it?
Extremely. You've just done something absolutely the worst of the worst to two people who have plenty of loved ones and friends, not to mention from all accounts, one of these ladies doing her job and traveling at such a distance to do her job and do whatever it is that the court have asked of her. So yes, I have been in situations with less, where families of both sides, families of the defendants and families of victims
And this was,
or
by the way, Scott, this was I thought it was the uncle, it was her father who tried to jump and go after these defendants.
So yeah, it is absolutely expected. And law enforcement anticipates this, and law enforcement does their best. And we've employed, as I imagine the courts have employed, victim advocates who sit down with the families to say, you're going to hear some really tough things, and we are asking you to hold back. We're not asking you to be emotionless, but we're asking you to hold back, and ultimately for the sake of the justice system as it gets closer, and if a trial does take place, to have family members in there. It's going to be very, very tough to hear very tough details, and they're going to want to react and act out. But it's incumbent for the sake of the system, because what will happen is a bailiff will come out and remove them from the courthouse, which doesn't serve them. They want to be there, but it is tough to control those emotions, and law enforcement is very well aware of that, and that's why I think different parties are involved to help them, go through even breathing exercises that I have seen to say, if you can't do it, then don't go in. But it's a matter of talking and with the family members and trying to get them to agree and understand, no matter what you see or hear, do your best for the sake of the whole process to hold back from lashing out, talking out, shouting, etc. Cry, feel the emotions, do whatever, but there's a lot of anger, as well as there should be.
The aunt is quoted as saying, to hold my brother back from jumping, there's just too many emotions, so much danger. I don't understand how somebody can hate somebody so much that you want to kill them. My niece did not deserve that, and neither did the young lady with her. Very well said. I ask these guys this question all the time. Why do people do this? People are not thinking about the consequences. Scott, this question specifically for you from Brady Starr. Could the FBI request the ATF or IRS to freeze their assets? It's someone has said, a few people in the chat, that Granny Adams has a net worth of somewhere around $9 million. Imagine how far that goes in rural Oklahoma. But is this something that can be done?
You could always make a request, but for an investigation to see if, in fact, are there firearms that are not allowed? Is somebody a convicted felon, so thereby firearms should not even be in somebody's possession or accessibility? You and you can ask the IRS, hey, there's a lot of money to be here, and is it all legit? And so thereby, is there some, you have to do something a little bit more to say, well, you know what, they're involved in a illegal drug trafficking, or some other criminal activity where perhaps that money is ill-gotten gains, and so thereby an investigation based on some legitimate predicate could be initiated. But I tell you, I've had a tough time seizing drug dealers where I've had plenty of evidence to show their properties and the money they had is not legit, and it was still very difficult for me to freeze any assets. So a lot of times those assets could be used for their defense. So it's that would be a tough bar to reach if there's no predicate. The guns, sure. With regards to it, if there were guns on the property, I can tell you those guns have probably been removed. At least for the sake of this trial. But the money, it all depends. What business does she have? And if it's all legit, there's no way to. She'll be spending it in defense attorney's fees if that's the way she's going to go. But
the affidavit stated that Cole Twombley used his brother, the one who's running for sheriff in a few months, during the commission of the crime. I don't think that's I don't think it's going to help his campaign, but who knows in this area. The medical examiner, Fil Waters, and I want to get to parts of this affidavit too that was released earlier, but the medical examiner, as far as I know, has still not released a report. How long will the ME report take? And someone was asking, what do you think is a realistic timetable for, and I guess the other question is, would they all be tried together? And how soon could this trial, realistically, when could we expect these people to face justice in the courtroom? So I just asked you 37 questions.
Well,
how soon
could I
could
give you 37 answers?
Well,
Which I'm sure everybody is waiting to hear. But no,
Yeah.
I would say in a general sense, I mean, in terms of the ME, I am curious as to where they had the autopsy done. I don't know if they had to go as far as Oklahoma City or where they went for the autopsy, but the autopsies. But yeah, the reports are going to be the final reports may be 3, 4, 5 months away. The tox test may be longer than that, getting him back. So everybody needs to, calm down. It's going to happen when they get the reports done. And in regards to whether they're going to be tried together or not, that's something that the prosecution is going to have to decide whether they're going to do that. My thinking is probably not. I'm sure these 4 people, there is a degree to which they are involved. Now they're all being filed on, and the same punishment under the law of parties, which I'm sure they have in Oklahoma. We have it here in Texas. And regardless of what their role may have been, whether it was maximized or minimized, they're still part of the same event. So the same part of these 2 murders, and they could receive the same punishment. So all 4 of them could receive the death penalty, and it will just have to see how it plays out. I mean, again, we're early off into this. The prosecution may look at those 4 now defendants that they have, and do we play one against the other? You've got the grandmother who's already made a confession. How does that play out in terms of the other 3, in terms of their participation? Which one of them was at that scene when it happened? Were they all there? Was somebody called later on? Indications are now, to me, I think I have read that and this may be, I don't know if this was the 16th year, but there was going to be an attempt to do this very thing before. So in terms of premeditation here, I don't have any doubt that this thing was there was a plan in place. Now, whether or not they got to that scene with Jilian and Veronica, and they had a stepping off point, if this doesn't go right, this is what we're going to do, or we're going to head that way, and this is what we're going to do. So but the detectives know these things, and it will be interesting to see how this does play out in the prosecution of this case. So, and that's going to take a while. So it's going to be interesting, but I feel like given the case itself, just the magnitude of what's happened here and why it happened, I think they've got the right people who did the wrong thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. People are just going to have to calm down and let this thing work.
Tracy Nelson, look at this, also married to a Marine and now Kansas City, Missouri police officer, homicide detective for 23 years. Look at this. This is Fil Waters. Hoorah, Phil. I'm not allowed to say these words. I'm not a Marine. Thank you, COE, Joel, Scott, and Phil, for all you do. But Tracy is living a
Semper
parallel
Fi.
life to your
Semper Fi.
wife. Yeah. And then you got Natalie James. This is an interesting question, Scott Duffy. Are judges ever culpable for getting it wrong, as in giving grandma custody? I can't believe grandma got custody of this. Hit the like button, please, says Mandy. Scott Duffy, from your Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we did another fascinating show on Ellen Greenberg last night. If you guys have not seen this, please watch it. Not for me, but for the Greenberg family. This is a young woman, 27 years old, back in 2011. She is stabbed 20 times with a knife, just jabbed into her chest at the end. Her spinal cord is severed. 2 of the injuries are post-mortem, according to an independent autopsy, meaning they were inflicted after she already died. And it was ruled a suicide. What I found out last night, Scott Duffy, is the medical examiner is like Hebrew National. It is the higher authority. There's no one above a medical examiner. Whatever a medical examiner says is basically final word. And they also have immunity in a courtroom. And one of the things that's going on with the Ellen Greenberg case is that this case has never been investigated. So they're trying to now work on a civil case. And they finally got permission to depose a former homicide prosecutor, a guy named Guy D'Andrea, in all this. But it's been this like crazy uphill battle, and the defense attorney, the attorneys for the city of Philadelphia are saying, look, you can't question any of these people. They all have immunity. They're all attorneys, judges, government officials. They are immune from your questioning. Is this also Phil shaking his head? But I mean, it's a crazy argument, and they lost it. But some people, one assistant district attorney is not going to testify because she was granted immunity. But I guess it goes back to this question: are judges always immune? Do you know, or not, or can they be held accountable?
The short answer, I don't know about are judges always immune. I know in the different levels of law enforcement, and of course, judges, through jurors, through anyone participating in the process of the legal system, there is such a thing as qualified immunity, and it allows those to proceed in a way that they see fit, that's reasonable, etc. And sometimes, because we are human, we get it wrong from top to bottom, and shouldn't be held accountable civilly, criminally, because you got it wrong. That being said, you have to apply for qualified immunity. So in other words, if I am an investigator and I commit an egregious act, some sort of I go against my oath of duty and serve, and do something contrary that actually hurts a case, then it could be that, hey, he is now being looked at civilly, criminally, for something he did that hurt somebody else or got something wrong. And then in that case, it'd be like, yeah, you don't qualify for qualified immunity because of this other act. So it really goes into, what do judges know? What does anybody know with what the facts that they're dealt with? And then they make a decision based on that. And so thereby, I absolutely and have seen this push for qualified immunity being removed from officers several years that I strongly stand against. It is important that anyone in the justice system have this to go forward, to do their jobs right, as long as there is that strong foundation to do what you can at the very best of what you can execute in a case. So that being said, I absolutely support the qualified immunity. However, if somebody does something absolutely contrary to their oath of office
Yeah.
and tries to change the outcome, then I say, a proper investigation should determine that, and then allow the chips to fall where they may.
Yeah, I was amazed to find out that you really can't challenge a medical examiner, but they are, it sounds like, going to be able to depose. He's no longer in Philadelphia. He's actually down here. He was a medical examiner for the Parkland shooting, but they are going to be able to depose him and ask questions. Kevin Callahan raised a good point. Joel, isn't it strange the guy in the middle of this mess is blank missing? I know that is Wrangler Rickman, the father of Veronica's children. I know he's in rehab. The whole thing is senseless. Might have been the best thing to ever happen to this guy is being a drug addict and going to rehab, if in fact he had nothing to do with it, because he has an alibi apparently that he was there. Fil Waters, back to this confession by Granny Adams now, and the four of these people, and being a very tight knit community. What are the chances here? Do you think that one of these four or a multiple of them flip on the other after being pressured by prosecutors?
Well, I think there's a pretty good chance that they're going to try to minimize their actions and maximize the other ones. I mean, this is the all for one and one for all philosophy is right out the window with this bunch. With a group like this, they're going to be scrambling around trying to get themselves into the best position they can get themselves into. And Grandma. I mean, good for her. She's running this whole drama. So I don't think it's gonna. I think the other ones they may try to follow suit and say, hey, look, I didn't know, and blah blah blah, whatever. But I think you'll see a parting of the ways here between people to save their own skin.
I'd have to agree with you. Jimmy McNutty, absolute power by any office results in corruption. Absolutely. Checks and balances required. There you go. I agree with that statement. Scott Duffy, back to the affidavit. A couple of things I want to get to. Then we'll go to the wacky true crime stories of the week here. But according to the affidavit, the evidence here, and again, law enforcement did a great job, suggested that the injury was severe. Blood is reported to be found along the road. And what else they found near the car were Veronica Butler's glasses on the ground, a broken hammer, and a pistol magazine belonging to Jilian Kelley still inside the purse. A broken hammer is what catches my attention. I mean, obviously, this paints the picture of a very violent crime. I mean, I know you don't know the answer to this, but when I think of the hammer, I'm thinking of them beating on them. Others say it was to knock out windows, but this hammer was broken. How important a piece of evidence is that going to be when it comes to trial time? And look at this. Scott Duffy equals common sense. So give us a common sense answer here, Scott.
Well, yeah. So if the hammer was brought to that is used in the commission of a crime, as opposed to the hammer being in the victim's car and trying to use it in defense or whatever, I'd like the fact if the hammer was brought to the crime scene, that there's tremendous amount of evidence on the crime scene, regardless of it broken or not. I don't know if it's one of these skinny little hammers that I wouldn't use for anything, even to nail a thumbtack, or if it was a good size hammer that had a strong handle, and it being broken could then at least show investigators the amount, the extent of a fight, if in fact there was a fight. So it all depends what this hammer is and who brought it and so forth. And they should be able to tell, a good crime scene investigator, where that hammer was used. For example, on the car to break out windows, on a body, should be able to match up, whatever damage that hammer was used on. And so regardless, it's a good piece of evidence, and the blood and everything else. Just um, I'm curious with regards to this magazine. Um, so you're saying it was a magazine clip,
It was
Joel?
it was the woman, Jilian
Yeah.
Kelley, one of the
Yep.
victims, her magazine clip, no gun in there, but just a magazine clip. I would have to think that, and of Jilian on the left, that maybe they took the pistol, maybe with another magazine in it. Who knows?
Yeah. So yeah, and they will be able to surmise from that scene, from the interviews, especially coming from the grandmother, the mother-in-law, and anybody else, to be able to put together, to have that crime scene match with what they have determined. So, and to be able to put that all together in a good picture to present to a potential jury is just, it's going to be amazing. And it will, depending on just how violent the crime scene is, to where um, did they, like Phil had said, was it an attempt to stop them and have a conversation, or whatever it is, and then it broke bad, or was their intention to destroy them, and they did not know what was coming their way. So all that, with the evidence combined with their interviews, they should be able to come up with a pretty good narrative that should withstand any defense theories to combat the ultimate brutality of this.
Well said. By the way, before I forget, next week is a wacky week. It is Passover, no live shows Monday, Tuesday, but bringing you two very interesting shows. Monday night is the former hostage negotiator for King County in Seattle. He's got some wild stories. And then Tuesday, a little off the beaten path, back to the Supernatural. We've got Dr. Avi Loeb, who I interviewed, world famous Harvard astrophysicist. He uses high-powered telescopes way beyond my understanding, and he spotted something called Uma, which is what he believes to be some sort of extraterrestrial spaceship. He wrote a book about it. There's a movie being made about it, and he asked me for something in this episode, and it's interesting, and I got a kick out of it, and so did Carm. So that will be Tuesday. So we'll be back live on Wednesday. I look at this photo here, these two photos, and this is where I just cannot connect the dots. How could anyone kill these two people? I mean, I just can't wrap my head around it. Like, why not come to some sort of agreement about the child or the children? Why do you have to, this woman, Veronica, on the right, never going to smile again. Jilian on the left, never going to smile. Kids are never going to see them, all for a crazy moment in time where these four people allegedly did something absolutely horrific. Why anyone would do it, I do not know, but there are no answers to why sometimes. The bigger question here, Fil Waters, where do you think the investigation stands from the law enforcement side? And could the son here, Wrangler Rickman, be brought into this if he's found to have helped in the planning or the commission despite being in rehab?
Oh, I think that's a possibility, and I think that's something that OSBI is looking at if they haven't already brought that to a conclusion. My thinking is that if that were the case, he would have been one of those arrested at the time that they arrested these other four knuckleheads. So that's maybe something that we'll just have to wait to see what happens. It may be a situation where the prosecutors are going to ask him if he wants to be a suspect or a witness as to what he knew and when he knew it. So that's a possibility that he's going to be brought into this thing in some capacity.
Georgia OKC. Today we remember the Oklahoma bombing. Tomorrow is my 73rd birthday. Happy birthday, Georgia. Young 73. Sadly, it was Hitler's birthday too. Yes, a lot of weird things right around this.
Probably could have left that out.
Yeah, right around this time. Jilly Bean, your book is coming. It's not released till May 14th, so it's going to be coming in a couple of weeks. I promise you that. And good news, the audio version, we're not sure if there's going to be a pre-release on that, but it will be released the same day as the physical copy, of course, on Audible and all the audio platforms. Scott Duffy. So one of the interesting things here is that Granny Adams refused to let her own son, the guy we were just talking about, Wrangler Cole Rickman, she did not let him have custody because he was in trouble with drugs, and she worked it out with the court system that she was going to be in charge of the custody. And one of the conditions was that she had to pay for a court supervisor. She had to pay for that. She got like $9 million. So I don't think it was a big deal. But what we found out in the affidavit, she said that this person was unavailable. This is Granny Adams said this person was unavailable, the one that she had to hire on March 30th. That individual was spoken to by law enforcement and said that she was asked by Granny Adams, this paid supervisor was asked by Granny Adams to take a quote unquote couple of weeks off. So this part of it, there was obviously intent here because the person that would normally supervise, she said, no, don't show up. I might be doing something, wink, wink, and take a couple of weeks off. How detrimental is this to her as this case proceeds through the court system?
I think I can answer it this way. So let's say, for argument's sake, the charging document, these four individuals are guilty. And they did exactly what the charging document said they would do. With that being said, I think everything comes into question. For example, was the son involved or not involved? Did he just happen to go into a rehab just before all these series of events? I would question that. I would question everything the grandmother has done if I can show that there was this long-standing planning to do what they did. So it's not like this murder is done in a vacuum and everything else is just circumstantial. This is the way I would be looking at, and so thereby everything, and it would go into play that this is, as JC, premeditated 100%. This would go into play in support of a premeditation. Now, again, a premeditated murder doesn't have to be weeks or months in planning. It can be just a plan that has taken place in a reasonable short period of time, and then I go do it. But I think as long as if law enforcement can piece this all the way back and put a considerable amount of time, I think it goes to show the depravity, the sense of how low this person is, that, and not once did they question themselves. Did somebody come up and say, shake out of it? This is, and then I would put into question everything the grandmother has done. What was her purpose for these children? Why did she want custody? What is it? On what earth? There's no, to me, if all these charges are correct, that I would then question every aspect of her to include a love for these children, and so thereby everything would be called into question, including everything about her and everything surrounding her. This would be very suspect, and help law enforcement to show that this is a long-standing plan.
I love this question because this reminds me of me, completely out of left field. Random question for Phil. I know you're a Ferrari fan, not only a fan, but an owner, a multiple owner. Do you watch F1? And if so, your thoughts on Sainz maybe going to Red Bull? Are you an F1 fan, Phil, being the car fanatic that you are?
I have become an F1 fan. Yes. In fact, it's funny that he brings that up because I was just looking at
He is a
the
she,
article here.
Phil. He is a
Oh,
she.
she, okay, that she brings this up. The Red Bull F1 news that Helmut Marko reveals unbeatable Carlos Sainz contract offer after confirming talks. So Carlos has been doing quite well this year, as a matter of fact. So, but he's going to. It looks like he may be headed to Red Bull, and of course, that all came about because Lewis Hamilton left Mercedes after 11, 12 years, and is now going to Ferrari in 2025. So, yeah, that F1 stuff. There's a lot of drama that goes on there
It's crazy
between these racers and these companies. Yeah, it's
By the
pretty,
way,
interesting to watch.
I think we should do a show in the very near future where we do not discuss true crime, where we just take questions the entire time about random weird things. You can ask about chinchillas, Ferraris, whatever you want to ask about. I'm down for that. The true crime sometimes gets too heavy. But Fil Waters, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I live in Miami, and both Vegas and Miami have F1. And I thought a couple of years ago, when my son was only 3, that would be a good idea to take him. Needless to say, I did not know that the parking was like, for security, was like probably 2 miles away from the. Anyway, I had to carry this kid for miles, but it was so unbelievable. I would never go again because it was someone invited me, and the tickets are ridiculous, and I would never pay that. But to watch these cars go at 200 something miles an hour around these, it's unbelievable. And I'm not sure why that one guy, who's the Max Verstappen, he's the Red Bull.
That guy, yeah,
He wins every race.
He's the lead driver for Red Bull, and he's been the I think 4 years in a row. It's something incredible. It's crazy. The guy is just unstoppable. He's unstoppable.
Hashtag male energy. Fil Waters, would you, if you had to do it all over again, would you have become an F1 driver and not a detective if you had to do it all over again?
Well, I went wherever the Lord sent me. So, but yeah, I mean, that stuff. Well, that's what's cool is that Ferrari has several different opportunities that you can go and drive Ferraris in that setting. They're not F1 racers, but you can. There are a lot of Ferraris that go 200 miles an hour, so you can actually go to the setting, and you can go to Maranello and take part, and they put you through these driving courses, and it's pretty cool. And maybe one day that's on my bucket list to do that, because it's not cheap. But
Phil, you can tell me, and I won't tell anyone else, on the regular road, the highway, what's the fastest you've ever taken your Ferrari? I won't tell anyone.
Well, I've pushed I haven't yet driven the second one, so I can only give you an answer for the first one, and I will just say that I was very impressed with my 308, and at the point that I had to run, I ran out of road and had to come off the pedal.
What's the answer?
Yeah, what's the answer?
I'm not giving you an answer. That's
okay.
I thought he was going to say. Here's my follow-up question: If you got Phil,
I'm deflecting, Scott. You've seen that in the interview room.
Phil, if you got pulled over in that moment, do you think you'd be able to talk your way out of that ticket?
Are you asking me again?
Yeah. Let's say you were doing that and you happen to get pulled over. Do you think you'd be able to get out of that ticket?
That might be a tough one to sell. I haven't had a ticket in almost 40 years, because that's about the time I became a police officer. But Gosh, I don't know. That would be a tough one. I'm not sure I would, unless I got stopped by an officer who was as much of a Ferrari fan as I am. Perhaps. Oh, and was a Marine. Perhaps. But
By the way,
that'd be a hard sell, I think.
To both of you, do you guys have stuff either on your license plate and your windshield that that illustrates that you're former law enforcement and therefore you don't get parking tickets either? Do you have anything?
No.
Anything you can send me, Scott? You have a placard that says FBI or something?
No. If I had that, it would be towed. If
yeah,
but I will say, I do have a small license plate FOP emblem.
There you go.
But it doesn't do anything for,
I'm gonna have to order. You know who does that? Carm. Carm always supports law enforcement. They send her these stickers and she keeps them in her car in case she gets pulled over. Carm has actually gone 275 miles an hour in her Volvo. A lot of people don't know that. But look at this. Jenny Price. Can Scott dress in his leprechaun best for random question day? And can Fil broadcast live from his Ferrari? And can all the pets be present? Yes. Should be an amazing show. Joel loved that question. I'm completely off track here. Let's put a bow on this. So Fil Waters, one of the questions that keeps coming up is, how do you get 4 people involved in a murder? Which is a great question, because if you two came to me and said, hey, Joel, let's go kill someone, I'd say, look, I know you guys are cops and you can get away with a lot, or FBI and all this others, but no, thank you. I don't want to do it. How did Granny get these 3 people to just go along with her, Fil Waters?
Is that a retourical question?
It's an open-ended question. It was open-ended for a veteran.
Well, I mean, look at it. I mean, really, look at it. Is it really that hard to figure out? I mean, I'm sure that family tree probably has one part of it. Not a lot of branches in that tree, I don't think. But you get some knuckleheads like this together with a common purpose, and you've got some crazy ideology nonsense. Because look, if they're this anti-government and all that stuff, this is the very essence of what they absolutely abhor. So these child custody proceedings, government stuff, the mother wants the child back. They're sending a person with her who is there to supervise this meeting. That's more government stuff. There is a chance that Granny may lose custody by virtue of a judge ruling. More government stuff. So you've got the perfect storm for something like this to happen.
So I'm just looking, the other obvious things is that Granny, first of all, they got taser guns. Granny was searching how much pain does a taser induce. There's prepaid cell phones. They use burner phones, all kinds of incriminating evidence. And it is amazing, to Scott's point, how quickly they were able to put this all together. Then the 16-year-old daughter of Cora Twombley gets drawn into it. And so the evidence seems to be overwhelming. And now, of course, the legal system is going to have to play out. By the way, Granny Adams was also chair, believe it or not. And I don't understand this part, because she's a sovereign citizen reportedly, but she's also on the chair of the Cimarron County GOP. I'm not sure how that squares, because how can you be in the GOP if you don't believe in government? So maybe she was not part of, God's misfits or a sovereign citizen, but we'll have to wait to find out. Fil Waters, what do you know about a 1962 Ferrari GTO? Because Mark says, say no more.
Oh, they're beautiful. I'll never be able to afford one.
What's one of those go for? And by the way, Christina has gotten her Prius up to 105. Just don't do it around former police officer Scott Duffy. How much is a what is that 1962 GTO? How much is that?
Oh, you're talking several $1 million. Yeah, I want to say the it was that car. Is that the one that they had in Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Is that the 250? I think that was the 250 GT.
Do you think Jeff Bezos could afford it?
Oh, I'm sure Jeff Bezos could. He could probably buy, however many there are left. But I'm going to say that's a, you're talking several $1 million, several $1 million for one of those.
Carmen, I always argue if it's she always says if it's a money problem, it's not a problem. I always say yes, it is. Scott Duffy, let's have you weigh in on that. If it's a money problem, it's not a problem. Do you agree with Carm or do you agree with me? Because if I don't have the money, I can't do a lot of things that I want to do. And if you do have the money, you can. So what do you say, Scott Duffy?
Money or no money? Is that the question?
Well, she says, again, if it's a money problem, it is not a problem. I say you're wrong, Carmela. If it is a money problem, it is a problem. What you're telling me is absolutely wrong. Who do you agree with?
I'm slow on this. So
look at this, we got answers. While you're thinking of that, Phil, it was a 1961. It was a 1961 Ferrari 250 GT California Spider, and I guess that's Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, but it was. Yeah, I thought it was a 250, but those, the 250s, that era right there. I may be wrong about this, but I know that there have been a couple that have been sold, auctioned off between $50 and $70 million.
Wait, what? 15, 17 million for what?
50 for one of these 62 250s. 50
Really?
to 70 million. Of course, the one they used in Ferris Bueller was not a real 250.
How many are there?
There's not very many. And the one they used, of course, they were replica cars, the ones that in Ferris Bueller. But I've watched that movie several times just to get to the end of it, where that goes out the back window of the house, the father's house, and it's even hard to watch knowing that it's a replica car. And those cars those cars sell for $250,000 to $400,000, just the replicas do. So
one of my best,
it's quite a car.
One of my best friends in the world, who I mentioned in the book, and he's I say this lovingly, a complete idiot like I am, and we talk about nonsense, but his stepfather is a very successful attorney, and he's like a 4-year-old. He's in his 80s, but the two things that he loves, he dresses up. He does Revolutionary War reenactments, which is something my son would do, dress up like a soldier. And the other thing that he does is he collects Bugattis. He's got like a warehouse of Bugatti. And a Bugatti is like $1 million. Phil, you ever deal with Bugattis? You ever go down that road?
I looked at them. I mean, they're way out of my range, but they're pretty cool cars. Whenever I hear Bugatti, I always think about the guy that I think it was in Miami. Was it in Florida where he was driving down some sort of a causeway or something, and he on purpose drove it into the drink so he could collect the insurance, and there was somebody paralleling him, and they saw the Bugatti and went, "Oh, that's a cool car," and they were videoing him when he sank it. You remember that?
I don't remember.
Yeah,
that sounds very
cool.
much.
So that was a good plan that he had, that he didn't know that there's always somebody watching. So
yeah.
He got
so we had I guess
he got arrested. I think he got arrested for insurance fraud.
Sounds like a very Miami story. We're obviously, I have the wild true crime stories of the week that we'll get to, but Fil and Scott, I don't know if you heard this, but typically when I was traveling for work, i.e. being a reporter, every time I would go on the road, it was a running joke. There'd be some sort of catastrophe at home. whether it be my daughter falling out of her bed or my wife hearing a noise and then having the entire SWAT team over, and it turns out it was the wind blowing the door open. Things of this nature would happen all the time. So the other night I was with Carm, and I was like, I'm going to be gone tonight because I have to sign books with Carm, and I get frantic calls from my texts from my daughters and calls from my wife. You got to get home. You got to get home. My son and my middle child, they share a bunk bed, and Z-Bug's bunk bed is on top because my son is younger. And apparently what happened, and this is graphic and could be disturbing to many. It's just another night in my life, so it doesn't affect me. But what happened was, Phil's not going to be happy with this story because he's a Marine. He makes his bed. There's quarters that have to bounce off it. Long story short, apparently Z-Bugs, who likes to eat in her bed, had left food there for probably since we moved in on day one. And suddenly my wife and my daughter discovers that they are what they describe as bugs and larvae, and in excess amount. Needless to say, my wife hates bugs, ironically, even though that's her nickname. I come home, everything is on the side of the house, like where you throw the garbage out. Mattresses, pillows. I mean, this is just a day in my life, so I wasn't that surprised. The kids are now sleeping in the other room, but the smell of Raid that my wife, I literally thought I was just going to drop and die. Right? As a matter of fact, she left the kids in the other room, and I was like, you can't leave them there because it's just, it was like the house was like moist from Raid. She literally, like, the stock price went up on Raid by the amount that she sprayed. But this gets fast forwarded because I told the story the other night, and then Jimmy McNutty says, Joel, you reminded me to tell us about the old Jersey house. So I can't bear to tell this story, so I'm going to keep it short. And I can tell Scott and Phil are like, geez, I can't believe he's going to tell another meaningless story. So this is in a different lifetime back in New Jersey. And this is another Joel factoid. How do I say this without getting in trouble? So before the COE, I had a gal friend, and that gal friend is actually related, I won't tell you to who, but to someone in the E Street Band. So I have probably been to 85 Bruce Springsteen concerts, and I've sat with all the big stars because I was quote unquote family back then. So we were racing down to the Jersey Shore, believe it or not, to see in Atlanta, in Asbury Park is where he would practice, and going to see him and hang out with these people, which was incredible. Look, everyone's telling me stop. This is when I keep going. Here's the long story short. We had to stop off at my house I grew up in, and I noticed an unusual buzzing sound. And I look up, we had I don't know what you call them, like two big windows in the kitchen. And I noticed a couple of flies. And then as I proceeded through the house, I saw no one was at the house. My parents were retired. I forget what was going on, but no one had been there for a while. And I just noticed 10 flies, 20 flies, 30 flies, 100. And literally there were probably 1,000, if not 2,000 flies in this house. And they were all kind of glued to a window. Long story short, had to call up Yorkovanka Milkovich's son, who her real name, or her American name, was Jerry. She's a woman look at this story. She's a woman my mom brought over from Yugoslavia, helped her come here, and she started an amazing cleaning business. She's since died. So super long story short, I don't know where these fires are coming from. I'm absolutely disgusted. I'm supposed to go down and see a Bruce Springsteen concert. I call up Yorkovanka Milkovich's son, who's a cool dude, and his real name is Momir, but he goes by Michael. And he's one of these guys that, drives a motorcycle as fast as Phil drives a Ferrari, and not afraid of anything. Grew up in the former Yugoslavia, was in the military. He traces these flies to our fireplace, and with his bare hand, while laying on his back with his significant belly now exposed to me, he reaches up in there and pulls down a rigor mortis raccoon that these flies had been buzzing and eating. The smell was enough to make me die. And we found out where the flies were, but they kept going. So he's like, let me get in here. And he climbed up and pulled out the second rigor mortis raccoon. May they both rest in peace. And I'm not exaggerating when I say it took 6 months to get the final fly out of that house. There might be a fly in there right now. We haven't had the house for 20-something years, but there may be a fly left in that house. I don't know if there are any viewers left. I noticed that the viewership here is declined.
I'm gonna Scott. I mean Joel. I'm gonna use a Vita quote here.
Yes, please.
That's a really long story.
Moving on. These are the true crime stories of the week. Thank God it's Friday.
I knew when you said it was a short story 3 times. This is the short. This is the long.
My mom always says
3.
My mom always says short story long. She always goes short story long, and then she goes on for an hour. Okay, so Phil, this is sort of religious in nature, but not really. So I will toss it to you if you're a religious man. Go. A jury trial began this week for a Massachusetts man accused of drowning his father during a mental health episode back in 2021. He believed his father was possessed, and therefore he had to baptize him in a local pond. The suspect's name is Jack Callahan. His father, Scott Callahan, 57, was a senior vice president at, look at there's tie-in here, Texas Capital Bank. Callahan, the younger one who murdered his dad, told police his father was struggling with alcoholism, and he picked him up in an Uber after he suspected that he was drinking in a bar. He was 19 years old at the time, this guy, and he asked the Uber driver to drop them off at a local pond near Duxbury, Massachusetts. The district attorney here says that the victim was punching his father in the face, and he went on to state that in this incident, he believed that he was baptizing his father because he was demonized by alcohol. That is the story. This trial is, I think, underway. He pleaded not guilty to the murder charges. Fil Waters, obviously many, yes, Jersey Jen is correct. Baptism by drowning. Does this story surprise you?
No.
Huh?
No.
How come?
Well, I mean, this guy's a nut, so, whatever his reason was, whatever is spinning around in his brain housing group there. I mean, the guy's, on occasion I use that technical term that we used, and yeah, he's a nut. So there you go.
Scott Duffy, by the way, Ida Shaw, friend of the show here. Joel knows long stories and makes them longer. That is my husband's expertise. Please say hello to him. I'm just here to tell stories. This is what we have dubbed the Bigfoot murder, Scott Duffy. A man who claimed he killed his friend because he believed the victim was summoning Bigfoot was convicted of murder. I mean, Phil, how do you handle this in interview rooms? What I want to know. Larry,
wow!
Listen to this.
You got to approach that guy as though
you got.
You're with him. You're with him on the Bigfoot thing, right?
Yeah.
Scott? Yeah.
Well, listen, Scott. Listen to this. Phil's making fun of us, but I believe in Bigfoot. Larry,
no, I'm not making fun of Scott. I'm making fun of you. So let's get that straight.
Larry Doyle Sanders, not to be confused with Dion. He was found guilty by an Oklahoma judge April 17th. Jimmy Knighton was strangled to death in July of 22 while out fishing with this guy, Larry Doyle Sanders. After waiving a right to a jury trial, Sanders' attorney reportedly claimed that his client had acted in self-defense. This happened in Oklahoma. The Oklahoman reported that Sanders claimed during testimony that while out noodling with this guy Knighton, he had seen 3 Sasquatch-looking figures by the river. Witnesses for the prosecution testified that Sanders had said he believed Knighton was trying to kill him and send his body down the river as a sacrifice to Bigfoot. And so he had to eliminate this guy. He did not want to be sacrificed to Bigfoot. Now, the paper reported that a forensic psychiatrist testified that this guy, Sanders, was suffering from methamphetamine-induced psychosis, and that's what triggered this. I mean, all joking aside, Scott Duffy, so this one, Bigfoot is coming after him. What does meth do to people's mind? He obviously believed that three Bigfoots were coming after him, and so he had to kill his friend so that Bigfoot would not get to him. Does this surprise you, Scott?
No, it doesn't surprise me. But so we're back in Oklahoma talking about meth.
Yeah. Which, by the way, they think a lot of these God's misfits were smoking some of that meth.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a believer in the Sasquatch. I will say, in today's day and age, how can somebody talk about seeing Sasquatch and not put him on camera? I got to see him on camera.
Yeah, maybe he was too high. Scott, I know I've asked you, but
three at one time is an that's amazing.
Maybe that's where they multiply, in that particular river, down by the river, as Marilyn says here. Scott, do you believe that there is life outside of planet Earth? Scott Duffy?
I wouldn't say I don't believe. I am open to it, but nothing has told me there is. I'm open to it.
This story should surprise both of you, but it probably won't. A woman in Brazil was arrested after she allegedly brought the corpse of an elderly man to a bank and tried to get him to, sounds like something I would do, and tried to get him to sign paperwork by guiding his hands. Now, I could see wheeling Carmen to a bank and trying to force her to sign this. This woman's name is Erica de Souza Vieira Nunes. She was captured in a widely circulated video, which there is video of this, trying to get a motionless man in a wheelchair to sign a paper at a Rio de Janeiro bank. The man, who authorities say was deceased at the time, was 68-year-old Paulo Roberto Braga. She was allegedly trying to get him to sign a loan in the equivalent of $3,250, but she could not get the loan. Fil Waters, have you ever heard of someone wheeling a dead person in? You see this in the movies sometimes, where someone's on their deathbed and you're trying to get the, the signature for the will.
I think this woman must have watched the Venezuelan translated version of Weekend at Bernie's. She had to get the idea somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. What I don't understand is how Phil and or you, Scott, would ever be able to, like, if you picked up a case like this, how could you take it seriously? But you do, because these are serious cases. But that's why you're better than me.
This is a case that I would look at and I would say, good initiative, poor judgment.
Look at Mia Bido. There's a great Bigfoot museum in Portland, Maine. What I would give to go to that museum with Fil and Scott and do a live show there about nothing, that would be incredible.
Hey, that Bigfoot Sasquatch stuff in Oklahoma is a big deal.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, there's a whole tourism thing surrounding all of that Bigfoot Sasquatch stuff. So that's a big deal.
Everyone might be shocked to realize this, but our viewership is dropping a little bit right now. I can't believe it. So the next two stories are tow related, and despite the numbers, I must forge on with important stories. A 32-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of assault and other charges after he allegedly cut off a man's toes during an argument. And like I said, this is the first of two tow stories. According to BTW TV, on April 3rd, Horry County Police Department officers responded to a stabbing call in an apartment complex near Surfside Beach. I think this is in Texas. They'd been feuding together. And this guy, Hellman, attacked another guy whose name I don't know. And he took a machete and he chopped his toes off his foot in one fell swoop. This guy pleaded guilty to armed robbery. I guess he was trying to get money. And he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Scott Duffy, in all your years in law enforcement, have you ever heard of a toe attack where someone chops someone's toes off?
No, Joel, I think that may be the first, but I think that he would have a good defense. No, I don't think it's an armed robbery.
Man, we're losing steam quick. This one, our friend Fil Waters will immediately have his ears perked up because he knows him well. John Wayne Bobbitt. If you're of a certain age, you know who he is. If you're not of a certain age, you have no idea. He is infamous, or famous maybe. I don't know which way you want to describe it. He's now 57 years old, but he became an international sensation in the 1990s when his then wife, notice it's not his wife anymore, Lorena Bobbitt, cut off his member with a sharp kitchen knife as he slept. Don't worry, it was later reattached by doctors. This made him and propelled him to become a pop culture icon. He actually went on to make X-rated movies, believe it or not, after this. But he's back in the news today, Fil Waters. He had to have all of his toes amputated. And when asked what it was like in relation to having his member sliced off in 1993, he said, now that, speaking of the incident in 1993, he said, now that was trauma. I was 26 years old when I lost my member. I didn't even want to live after that happened until the doctor put it back on. The toes are not nearly as traumatic. Phil, your reaction to this story? He has some sort of illness.
Well, I remember when that happened, and
every man.
I prefer the term tallywhacker, of course, instead of member. But that sounds more like you're in a club of some kind. Of course, I guess he is. He's in a very unique club. Not too many people have had their membership in the removed Tallywhacker Club. That's true. So, yeah, I remember when that happened, and I just wasn't his wife. She was like Colombian or something, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she was.
I think
it says it here actually. Yeah,
I think the lesson there is don't, because he did something that made her very angry, and then I think
she was Colombian. I think.
Yeah, and then he went to sleep, if I'm not mistaken. So,
yeah,
I don't think.
Well, he was mistaken. He never should have gone to bed.
You should not piss off your Colombian wife and then go to sleep, because it's probably not going to end. Well, it didn't for him, obviously. So I guess the next thing he knew, I think she chunked it out the window, if I'm not mistaken. I think she threw it out the window. Right?
They found it on a grassy knoll, not that grassy knoll, but they found it, and they were able. I don't know how they were able to reattach. I just remember Lorna McKenzie says Scott's expression, but I remember every man in America just collectively cringed.
Oh, that was yeah.
She threw it in the grass. Someone is reminding
us. That was a wince.
And the guy went on and had it reattached. Now he has no toes. This guy, it's like you can't win. A Canadian surgeon sewed his tallywhacker back on, but he was American, wasn't he? I don't know. Maybe this was Canada. Was this Canada? I don't know. I don't remember. A final story, and then we'll wrap up here. This was sent to me, by the way. I'm not the only strange one. So was Pamela Hogan. Not only did she send it to me, Black Widow with a words of wisdom here. Never go to bed angry. This is true. She's from Ecuador. Lorena Bobbitt, born 1970 in Quito. She's an actress. I would love to get her on this. I'd love to get her on this show with Fil and Scott. It'd be amazing. It would be amazing. Steve Cohen, if you're listening, let's try to get Lorena Bobbitt with Fil and Scott. We can ask her about her crime. Imagine dating her after that. Must have been hard for her to find men to date after that. Final story. This was actually sent to me by Pamela Hogan, a member of STS Nation. I'm going to read this entire. It's short. A Kinston man. I don't know where this is. I have no idea where Kinston is, but a Kinston man is behind bars after police say they investigated activity related to mechanophilia and a vehicle. The Kinston Police Department says a man was caught on camera Sunday tampering with the victim's vehicle parked on Atkins Street. He was identified as Walter McCrae. Sorry, Walter, to out you. And warrants for his arrest were obtained. Monday, investigators found the 52-year-old man and made the arrest. He's been charged with 1 count of felony stalking, 5 counts of damage to property, and 5 counts of injury, tamper with a vehicle. He's being held in the Lenoir County Jail. I have no idea where this is. Final sentence. Mechanophilia is defined as sexual attraction to machines or vehicles. It's in North Carolina, apparently. Fil Waters, have you ever heard of this? Does this surprise you? Will anything ever surprise you? This man was doing untoward things to a vehicle, to a car.
No, that doesn't surprise me, but I am curious as to how do you injure a car? Wasn't that part of the charge?
That's a great question. Yeah. By the way, it just reminds me of a car. It reminds me of another story that will take 5 seconds, I promise you. But it'll come full circle. We had an event at my kid's school. This happens to me every day. This is an event at my school. We were running super late. COE says, take the kids, go in. We're in our minivan. I race in. My daughter was doing like a family tree or a heritage type thing. It was a cute little thing. My wife comes in. She's like, I just got into an argument with this woman. She's nuts. I wouldn't be surprised if she slashes our tires. Well, she didn't do that. But when we got back to the minivan on my side, the COE was driving, she egged both our handles. There was liquid egg on both our handles. And the COE wanted to track her down and use her boxing. But I bring up the egg.
A horrible story, Joe.
Yes, another horrible story. But I bring up the gooey egg.
Will you ever get over the trauma?
Fil Waters, what would you do if someone egged your Ferrari?
And they were still there?
Yes.
Well,
Alive?
They would be they'd be having an omelet, I'm sure.
Would they be staring down the barrel of your 45?
No, I don't think it'd be that drastic, but yeah, they would enjoy the omelet that I would recommend they consume.
This has been quite a show. Sarah Adams says it best. I'd be pretty embarrassed to be accused of stalking a car. Scott Duffy, have you ever heard of this? There's actually a term for this. I think it is objectum sexual, which means that you are sexually attracted to objects. I once learned of this from, of course, one of the COE's friends, because there's a woman, it's a while, but you can Google this. There was a woman who wanted to marry the Eiffel Tower, Scott, and they defined her as an objectum sexual. Scott Duffy, does this surprise you that someone would either be attracted to a car or the Eiffel Tower?
No, it wouldn't surprise me. So you didn't get me there, but I will say you taught me a new word. I don't think I've ever heard of the term mechanophilia.
Mechanophilia,
or somebody actually having sex with the car and to be called something.
Mechanophilia.
So, I learned a new word.
I mean, let me ask you this, Scott. This will be my final question, then we could say our goodbyes. But let's say this happened in Lower Merion when you were once a police officer, and you had to write up a report saying, I'm arresting this guy for mechanophilia. And then you're out with your police friends. I mean, would you guys be doubled over, dying laughing over each other? Or would you be serious saying, hey, Tom, I had to arrest him. It was mechanophilia. This is my job. I'm a law enforcement officer, and I did what's right. Or would you be dying laughing?
Like now.
Yeah.
I would love to interview somebody like that.
It'd be amazing. I think we should start with Lorena Bobbitt.
Can you get him on a show?
I'll have his name. I'll have the COE. Imagine that. We do a 2-hour show with the mechanophilia guy. It'd be amazing. Actually, would be amazing. It would be quite a miracle. Scott, someone's saying something about
That'd be amazing for about 5 minutes.
Keep your cars off.
If that long, right?
Jersey Jen says, Scott, it's a word we wish we never learned. Thanks, Joel. Oh, look at this. Mind of Monsters weighing in. There was a lady that married a doll and had doll babies. Look, to each his own. Sarah Adams, hashtag card stalker. Well, I think we've sufficiently gotten off the real true crime. I have no. La gente está loca. What is a gente? I should know this since I'm married to a woman that speaks. What is
The
that?
man is crazy.
The man is crazy. The man is crazy. Yes, gente is a man. How could I not know? People. COE's letting me know. Vesper Martini here saying that Phil keeps a shovel in his car, and if someone egged his car, no one would ever see this person again. Is this true, Phil?
No, well,
Phil's
I have
just
made the
making it
comment that they'd never find the body, but that was just joking around.
Yes, of course. Look at this. Canine Catherine with the sharp tongue here, and I married a doll but didn't have babies. Yes, your husband is a doll. Well, it's that time of day again. Fil Waters, I hope I was able to put a smile on your face with my fly story and other stories and mechanophilia. When are you heading over to Scott's neck of the woods in Delaware? When is this happening?
Monday.
That's exciting. Are you excited?
I am. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be as a matter of fact, I'm going to attend. I'm going to attend there because I want to get the whatever credit hours you're giving for the training, and you are giving some credit hours, right?
Yeah, 24.
Yes. So I want to make sure I have my certificate for my continuing education here in Texas.
Look at Jenny Price. Awesome panel as always. Love this. She's the only one. Ned Smith. Can't wait to share all my newfound car knowledge with, nobody. That's a good one.
That's a good one.
Ned Smith makes me laugh. STS. This is a title you never want to have. The funniest show in true crime.
Hey, laughter is the best medicine.
Yeah.
Laughter
Mickey
is
Clutz,
the best
happy
medicine.
Passover to you. Yes, it is. Look at this. Ida Shaw, first Friday show. I haven't walked away.
Thanks, Ada.
Well, here, let me. I guarantee you, I can bring up a topic that will.
No,
get
don't,
that
Phil.
person to leave.
Phil, we made it. Please don't. Look at this, Sarah Adams. I can't quit you guys. You know what they say? The old Howard Stern promo was people who love Howard Stern watch on average like 37 minutes a day. Those who despise him watch an hour and 37 minutes. So, it's I don't know. It's working here. Look at this. Go, Phil. So Phil, I have a question for you, and then we'll have Scott sum up his weekend. I would assume you are a light packer. So you're leaving on Monday. When will you pack, and how much stuff will you bring when you see Scott? And will you bring him flowers?
No, I'll just throw a carry on, throw some crap in there. I'm a pretty I'm pretty light traveler. I'll bring my laptop and all that crap, but
but you will not check a bag. You'll just bring carry on. Okay.
No, I don't have time for all that.
And the other thing is, you have a tendency, when I met you at CrimeCon, you wear your slippers, which are flip-flops in Hawaiian speak. It's still a little chilly. You get a chilly day in Delaware. Will you be wearing your slippers, or will you be wearing?
Scott, I was going to ask you, what's the temperature up there? Is it a little cool still?
Yeah, but I think starting Monday, and it seems like it's a trend upward, mid-60s, and trending upward throughout the week.
Well, I will probably be prepared to wear my my slippers, but I'm probably going to have full coverage leather on my feet.
We did
I
quite
certainly
a
don't want
few.
to lose any toes.
Yeah,
in
we
the
did quite a few
process.
toe stories today. Kenneth says, bring extra, Kenneth, bring extra undies. Don't get your panties in a wad, as you say, Phil. 40, look at this. Don't miss this at all. Melvon Monkers from Dr. Seuss. 49 degrees now in New Jersey. Yeah, it's chilly. Scott Duffy, is your work done for this big week? Do you have a lot of work to do this weekend, and how will you be spending your weekend?
So this weekend, I don't have a whole lot going on as I will prepare for this upcoming week. But because we won't be together next Friday, I will
Makes
be
me sad.
preparing for an event at the Punchline Philly, August 28th. For any Philadelphia surrounding STS Nationers that want to stop by.
What is this? What is this?
So another, of course, another podcast show host, Jerry Williams, retired FBI. She is hosting her first live podcast, and she got the Punchline Philly Comedy Club. So we're talking true crime in a comedy club from 11:30 to 2, open to anybody who wants to walk through those doors. I'll
This
buy
is
them a
awesome.
beer.
This is incredible. When is this? What's the date on this?
I said August, April 28th. So it's a week from Sunday.
I'm curious out there, by a show of hands, how many people would come to see Phil, Scott, and I in person at a club talking true crime, which we do so well? We also talk about toes and dead raccoons.
Many of
What
them.
I don't understand Giovanni's comment. Now it's getting weird. This thing has been weird from day one here. So that's that. I have nothing else to say. I wish I was in Philly, someone says here. But so again, no live shows Monday and Tuesday. I will be celebrating the Jewish holiday of Passover, and then live shows Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, I'll have to do something. Someone recommended maybe the COE and Carm host a show. I like that idea. So maybe we'll do that, and even put in producer Steve Cohen. Sarah Adams says it well right here. Joel is the weird. Yeah. I guess that is true. People want a toe on show on toes. Look at this. We're even getting a super had to listen from the bushes. I'm not sure what that means. Happy Friday to Joel, Phil, Scott, CEO, and Space Coast, and the mods. Best team in all of true crime here. Scott Duffy, my final question is to you. You mentioned this true crime thing. By the way, justice for Ellen Greenberg. Please Google Ellen Greenberg or watch my show from last night. Her family needs justice. Someone please come to me with smart ideas about how to get her justice. Ellen Greenberg, GREENBERG. Someone in Tallahassee is saying some strange stuff happens in the USA. That is for damn sure. Scott Duffy, the final question. How do you square true crime with humor? Do you feel like you have to have humor despite the sometimes heavy and morbid subject matter? And that will be my final question.
Yeah, and Phil said it earlier in the show. So there is what we call a dark humor, and it's not meant to by any means be disrespectful. It's the absolute opposite. And so for you to see daily crime scenes and to be dealing with people at all, because we're typically dealing with people who are not at their best, and so in order to keep your own sense of sanity and to be to still have a life and to still be loved by someone, because otherwise you'll be a terror, you have to have a good sense of humor, and so it carries on. So anybody who's hanging around a group of cops, they will absolutely experience that sense of humor. So it is a way of letting off the steam, the trauma of whatever it is. It's so thereby we turn it to humor.
And you're not the only one. Us mental health therapists have to use dark humor too. By the way, I found out that in the bushes means that they are lurking and not active in the chat, which I know none of us knew, but everyone else does know.
Stay away from mechanophilia.
Yeah. Please stay away from mechanophilia. Humor keeps us sane. The Mind of Monsters we still need to get a billboard up for Ellen. Plea for justice. Let's Mind of Monsters. We are way overdue for a talk on that, and we need to have one because we got to get justice for Ellen Greenberg. Hope you guys have a great time. If you, Scott, if you have the time, or Phil, and you want to send me little tiny video clips, I will put them on Instagram because I know people will miss you. You can say hello to STS Nation while you guys are together. And let's see how this show goes with your FBI friend. And if it goes well, maybe the three of us will do our own show, maybe in Houston or Philadelphia. And we'll get people to come. We will invite, it'll be amazing, which will get us a lot of people there. Let's reunite Lorena and John Bobbitt. We'll bring them back together, and they will be our VIPs. What do you think? It'd be amazing.
Oh, my goodness.
We'll bring them back together. All right, everyone. Love you. We'll back live Wednesday. If you celebrate Passover, have a happy Passover. And be safe.
Shalom.
Shalom. Don't drive your Ferrari a trillion miles an hour like Phil. Please be responsible on the road. And we'll see you next week. Love you, America. Love you, Philly. Love you, Houston. And love you, Oklahoma, of course.